to the Barkada Podcast. We're here with Alex Schwartz, very special guest of ours here today. And we also have the First Lady of the Barkada Podcast, Patricia.
Hi there.
How's it going?
I'm excellent, and I'm super happy to be here. It's been a really long time, and I'm super excited to hear everything that Alex has to share with us today.
I'm excited to share. Thank you guys so much for having me on the podcast here.
Yeah. So we made the connection with Alex when you first started working here at Manila Resto. We're here at Manila Resto doing this podcast right now. How long ago has it been already?
My career here has been actually probably pretty short. I think I picked up shifts here in December.
December, okay.
Yeah, December. And then I took a month hiatus in January because I had business to do in Mexico and everything. So I guess in total, it's really only been like 2.5 months of me being on the roster and everything.
Sure. So how did we connect with you? Was it just like, how did you find us?
Yeah, well, I found you guys through your food. So my wife and I this last year, actually a year ago from today, we were in a life-changing experience in Brazil. We spent time 2 full weeks on an agroforested land that has its whole story with it. It's called Terabuma. And we really got acquainted to like food from the earth. And like understanding what it meant to have a carrot just tasted like straight from the soil. Leaving that experience, we entered a period of life where we decided to be vegan vegetarianism, and you guys had the best vegetarian food in the awesome. the 20-mile radius here. So we live 5 minutes away, so we came here quite a bit. And then after having worked on my computer, launching businesses for like 8 months and really feeling like the tech nut. I just thought about, man, I just need something on my feet. I want to be told what to do versus telling people what to do. And I've always wanted to like just give serving a try. So I was here one night listening to the music, and then I'm like,
John Harmon.
John Harmon, listening to John. And I'm like, I'm just going to ask if they need help.
And every restaurant in the world is like, people just ask?
Yep. Yeah. And I just asked, filled out the little application, and then I got started. Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, you've been great to have around, man.
Thank you.
And when Patricia was helping out, this last weekend, she was like, how long has he been here?
Well, one, I didn't know you, I didn't recognize you, and I didn't know your name. Like, and that's tricky for me to like, who do we got here that I don't know in our restaurant, right? But then it was just like witnessing how like you just had such ease with everyone, and I'm like, someone was like, wow, he's so knowledgeable with the menu. And like hearing guests like make a comment after a server leaves, which are good comments, right? That feels really nice. And then it's just, I had to ask, like, can you tell me more? And then he always follows it with, but he's leaving soon. He's leaving soon, right?
Yes.
So.
But we did have that conversation. He was like, well, when you decide to make a visit back here and you just want to
decompress, right, from your tech neck situation.
Right. Decompress by working a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. We were talking before it started and everything, but like how actually stuff like this does energize me. I mean, the work that I do, so it's online coaching, so a lot of time in front of the computer, but then there's a whole lot of other things like just managing the books and working with my marketing team and everything else that doesn't involve actually like the people connection, which I really love. So then it almost feels like a recess for me to come here at a great restaurant, serve amazing food, and just simply introduce myself to people and help them have a good time because they're coming here for an experience, right?
Yeah.
And I have the honor to be part of that experience. So that's what I loved about it. It's energizing.
Yeah, and that's such like, when we wanted, all of Manila is the Manila experience because people are coming in from like, I've never heard of Manila. Why did you name your restaurant that? We're like, well, it's actually the capital of the Philippines, so you're going to find Filipino food, right? Like that. There's so much education that goes into a guest experience at Manila, and that we just want them, like, we walk them through the menu because we want them to feel comfortable with it and at ease. And you're right, like they're coming to get away from the dishes, to get away from like having to like think about things, and you're just providing that good time. So your perspective is exactly what any restaurant wants their service to have, of like, how can I make your time tonight enjoyable? And you were sharing that a lot of your ease with guests comes from being a door-to-door salesman.
Yeah, so before I started my own business, I was in door-to-door sales for 3 years. with a roofing company,
Okay.
and big part of my story. But yeah, I was door knocking sales and everything like that. And the key for me, like I never was like the most handsome person to arrive at the door, the slickest salesman or anything like that. But I knew if I could get one thing right, and that was the greeting, I'm good. Like the only thing in my power I can't control, when you're knocking the door, you have no idea if there's a dog behind there. You don't know if you're disrupting them from their couch. You don't know if they're in the middle of dinner, of like having like someone over. Like they might be just getting back from a funeral, or they might be just getting back from their wedding. And like, so all of the emotions could be behind there. So that initial first 2 seconds is everything. Anything else that comes out of their mouth, for the reason you can't control, but you can control the circumstances in which you present yourself. So then relating that here to Manila, first thing that you need to do, put a smile on your face. How's it going, guys? Welcome on in. Good afternoon. Have you been here before? Welcome back. Well, like, congratulations for trying us. Like, my name's Alex. And then go from there, Just one step at a time.
Nice.
That's awesome. So everything that you just explained is almost like you have this understanding of the human persona. You have the understanding of like what it is to like live a lot of different lives, not just your own path. And like then you have blinders on, right? And you can't like, well, why did they greet me like that? Like you have this, like you're able to see it all. Where did that experience come from?
Ooh, a beautiful experience. So after college, I did not get an internship. I did not get a normal job or anything. I actually picked up all my stuff and lived in a tiny little beach town in Uruguay. So because I majored in Spanish and I left my degree thinking I don't actually know the language in full. So let me go live in South America for a little while. And I found a job at a hostel, a really popular hostel where people from all walks of life came in. People from Israel, Germany, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, languages that I spoke, English or Spanish, or languages that I didn't speak, like Portuguese was like a really common one.
Okay.
So having this like mezclat of people from all over the world was it was the closest I've ever been into like pure flow state, and like the amount that I learned in that period of time felt superhuman to me. Like my language speaking abilities like were activated. I learned guitar. I learned how to just connect with other people in like my own way. So that's where like I really understood mostly about myself first, and then about other people. But we were talking again before we rolled here. But my dream job would be like a camp counselor or something like that type of vibe.
Yeah.
But hostel situation was like camp counseling for kids. It was like summer camp with alcohol. so very different dynamic. But yeah, that's where I really turned it on. And then in that experience too, like I learned to surf. I became a surf instructor, and I had to like give surf instructions in like Spanish and that's not always easy. So like understanding like how people are feeling from their body language, from their facial expressions and everything like that. That all goes into like what then was the next chapter, which was door-to-door sales, and then the next chapter now, which is owning my own business and then taking up part-time work here at Manila.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I liked what you said that, to know others, you have to first know yourself, right?
Oh,
the more that
absolutely.
you know about yourself, then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that really went into my serving abilities here because like I said, I love food. I will pay top dollar for dinners and like the experience that comes with the dinner. And there has been times, if my wife was here, she'd attest to it, but like I can be like one of those like more difficult customers just because I have high standards for, depending on the quality of restaurant, like if we went off to Denny's or anything, like I'm not going to have like super high standards, nothing against Denny's or if you work at Denny's. But there's like a difference versus like a Manila restaurant and then Denny's, or like Author's Kitchen and Bar in Appleton is like a really good one. And there's a full experience that comes on with it. So I love that experience and I have those high standards, but I've learned to like, instead of taking those standards, just like casting them onto other people. It's like, this is the standards that I personally operate with. So now like when I serve, I operate with those same standards that I would would enjoy. So that's like a waiter that's like willing to tell a joke or willing to give space if they know it's like there's a difficult conversation maybe happening at dinner, or just like, hey, letting you know that the food's running a little bit late here, but can I get you some more waters and stuff like that, and not feeling ignored even, and making the experience what it is.
It's like the ultimate golden rule, right? The treat others how you want to be treated, but you're like, I'm going to apply this to like every aspect of my life instead of just in general, like, oh, I'll be a good person, right? Like you're just, here's how we're going to do it, which then as camp counselor, like what kid at camp wants like a monotone counselor? Like everything you do is kind of like, this is how I want to be treated. I'm going to treat others this way.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I did have an experience as a camp counselor once because I studied abroad in Argentina too before I lived in Uruguay.
Okay.
And I took on like a part-time job where I like was a counselor at an English camp. So where kids wanted to learn English, but they only spoke Spanish.
Yeah.
So this was a really interesting experience too, just to add on to like how people operate. But none of these kids spoke English, and it was actually even though I speak Spanish and I spoke Spanish, it was my job not to speak a word of Spanish. And so like there's this very interesting dichotomy between these kids and myself. When there is a language barrier, even though they're attempting to like overcome it and they actually did phenomenal with doing it. But then there's like this interplay of like, we're not speaking the same language, but we're on the same wavelength. And so like, then there's so much play, there's plenty of communication happening, even if it's just not like vocal and auditory.
Yeah. And I get that when I'm an English learner teacher, and so
Perfect.
People will say, "Oh, you speak all of those languages?" I'm like, no. Yeah, Spanish. I was probably like you when you graduate with a degree, right? But I can teach students from China and from all over the world because we're using English, but so much goes into like how I act it out and how I can draw pictures, or how if I'm reading, like, you seem like you need a little space today, right? And so much of that is being intuitive with body language, and it just makes it so that you get that whole human perspective and relationship, and a lot can happen even without that language. But man, you have so much that like has brought you to where you are. Questions before I jump ahead with another question.
So what is the business that you created is it for yourself, or do you talked about like having a team and everything too?
Yeah, so I have two businesses now. One of them is like way more fresh. But the first business that I am like the operating officer of is called Alter Coaching. And a little less than a year ago, I was in a position again for that roofing company where I really helped scaled that company phenomenally. But there were some difficult situations, some negotiations that needed to happen, and I hired a coach to help me through that. The same person that threw the retreat that I referenced in Brazil. I hired him as basically like an executive coach, like a high performance coach. And he led me through like the biggest transformation of my life, full of emotional turmoil with that business. And, you know, a ton. We could have a full podcast about just like my emotions in that time.
Sure.
But then working with him, it eventually led to me making the decision to walk away and to like close one chapter and to begin anew. And it was at that time where he asked, well, you know, what you did with the roofing company, how would you like to come do that with me and the coaching company? So we call that Alter Coaching. The master coach there, his name is Julian Gudulai. Also totally about languages. He's from Germany, speaks 5 languages, has helped dozens and dozens of CEOs, high execs, and everything like that. And has also bring like a very beautiful spiritual side to it, as well as he's been initiated into Kriya Yoga and have sat with gurus and sat with swamis and ashrams and everything. And he also owns a podcast too. It's called Green Planet, Blue Planet, and it's a top 3% podcast focused on environmental regeneration.
Wow,
so
cool.
Not to digress too much into that, but that's the first business.
Cool.
So I helped. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I helped scale that business. We put out courses. We put out, you know, he takes one-on-one clients. I'm a support coach too, along with like the business, because a lot of our clients are either startupreneurs, solopreneurs, or entrepreneurs, or all the way to like the high performing. You know, I have a 40+ person team under my wing, kind of executive. So I help out with that. And then the second business I own now, I recently started with my wife. It's called Duck the Date. And it's actually all in wedding coaching. So I never would have thought I got into the wedding industry, but very interesting story about how my wife and I's journey, but we started our relationship saying, yeah, marriage is just a piece of paper. We'll never need to get married. I love you. Like, the commitment's already there and everything. But then COVID happened, and then we saw one of our friends who was planning an exuberant wedding. We're just like, holy cow, I'm so happy we're invited to this, because we would never throw something like this. But then COVID canceled their plans, not once, not twice, and to witness them go through their struggles with having that experience. And then they actually just went out into the middle of Utah and got married all by themselves, from like 300 to 400 people wedding in New Orleans, to have a parade on Beale Street type wedding, to having just like the hoodoos of Utah being your witness.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
It was a magical experience, and my wife and I thought, yes, that's it. That's actually what we want to do. When we realized that we weren't avoiding marriage, we were avoiding a wedding. Mm-hmm. And so all the pressures that go on with wedding, the average wedding is $26,000. Average loan for a wedding is $16,000 for it. The average amount of trash for a wedding is 400 pounds of trash per 100 people.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And this is what blows my mind the most, is that a wedding takes about 6 hours. The venue, you rent it out for about 6 hours. And the amount of planning that goes into it is about 300 hours.
Yep.
So we ended up getting married way, way underneath the average. We planned the wedding and a 2-week road trip throughout the American Southwest in less than 8 hours. And we stepped into our marriage, we stepped into our wedding the same way that we envisioned our dream life for our marriage. Mm-hmm. Like, our dream life in marriage means waking up late, having pancakes at 11, hiking throughout the day, being with our dog. And we realized that a wedding wouldn't act like the traditional type of wedding, wouldn't involve any of that, because she would have to get up early. I'd hang out with the boys and drink beer and stuff like that. And then we'd be surrounded by all these people, some of which we don't even know. Mm-hmm. So we're scrap all that. We're only doing exactly what we want. And we're doing it how we want to live the first day of our marriage, on the best step possible. So now we've created a coaching company that helps people do just that, because even though it sounds really easy, there's so many nuances when it comes to it. There's relationship issues that we're involving. We're getting relationship coach certified. And then also really helping people navigate the social boundaries that need to be created, because when we were crystal clear on what we wanted to do, that didn't mean everybody else was. Mm-hmm. And that didn't stop people's opinions. So
the expectations that other people have for you, right?
Yes, mm-hmm. Yeah. Even when it comes to parents, yeah, sure, a woman may be thinking about her wedding for her entire life, and if she's 21 years old, she's been thinking about for 21 years. Well, so has her mom and dad, in a certain sense, even though it's not their wedding that they're getting married in. It's their daughter's wedding, and there's this assumption that this is equally our wedding, or we have stake in this too. Yeah. So that's a tricky one, So that's one of our main pillars that we help people navigate the guest list, navigate your boundaries, navigate your own relationship, and what does a ideal marriage actually look like for you, and how can you make that happen on day one?
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I got teary-eyed at some points of that, because that is magical, right? When you lay it out that way, what person wouldn't want their wedding day to be that first day of the rest of their married life? And it is, right? No matter what it is, but you plan it out the way you want. And maybe some people will still choose to have the big party, right?
Totally. But if you choose that's actually what you want, we're working with a couple right now, that's what they want, and they're crystal clear, and they're 100% both on the same page. Boom, that's what we really want. What we don't want is you not being on the same page, and you not being excited for it, and you not making conscious decisions, financial decisions, time commitment decisions, everything. Yeah. We want it's all about alignment as you go into this this marriage journey for you. So. But unfortunately, sometimes there is the wobble where you're not completely on the same page, and oftentimes that results in stress, compromise, and regret. And like, if, for our for people that work with us, like, they're not going to be stressed, they're not going to be compromised, they're not going to be regretting, because like, why would you want to start your relationship with those three things?
Yeah, holding on to that, yeah.
Yeah. If that's day one, and you have a lifelong journey ahead of you, like, let's get it started off on the best foot possible without those things.
And I like that it all kind of ties back to what you were saying before, like knowing yourself, right? Like, first off, when you guys like made that, oh wait, that's actually what we don't want, is we want marriage, we don't want the party. So it's like, like once you figured that out from yourself, and then when you're working with all these people, it's, taking back the layers of like, no, okay, let's get a little deeper. What is it that you actually want? Because there's so many outside society expectations.
So many, yeah.
How did you, so there's, businesses are born in different ways, right? Like, you can choose, this is what I'm going to do. Or like Marlo with Manila, like, so many people were like, oh my gosh, your food is so good, your food is so good, your food is so good. And then it's like, wait a minute, I think people here in this community actually like my food, and I could put it at like a full scale thing, like a restaurant. So how did you have the idea, or was it a demand?
Well, for Alter Coaching, that one came out of an offer to me. And I felt passionate about it because the transformation that I went to, I'm like, more and more people deserve this type of treatment, and I want to make that available for more people. For Duck the Date and the wedding coaching, that came out of anger. So when people are looking for inspiration, like, one of the best pieces of advice for inspiration is, what makes you mad? Because anger can be a very positive thing. If you're mad about this part of the world, like, there's a little bit of fuel to your fire for you to go change it, and you're like laser focused in and have the energy to do it.
Just being able to channel your energy, channeling that anger into a different kind of energy, a positive energy, if you will, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my wife and I, throughout the process of us getting married, we're just man, this can be so different. Like, this doesn't have to be this way. It's like, or kind of just like scrolling on like Instagram or Facebook and just seeing like what is being pushed, in this case by an algorithm for what you should do, and all these different people at stake in the wedding industry that want you to have it a certain way. We're just like, man, this is just a bunch of crap. Like, at the end of the day, like, we just want to like step into a marriage that we just feel really confident in. Because we're confident in our relationship, but like, let's start off our marriage in the right foot possible. So we had plenty of like those one-off conversations. And then one day after we were married, we just took a walk after, I think, something triggered us to talk about weddings. And we went on like a 2.5 to 3 hour walk, just talking about, just like ripping on the wedding industry. And so we're like, well, we can sit here and talk, but we can also like change it too, because there is a demand. We recognize the demand for there to be a different way, right? Not everybody wants to go to that route. That's completely fine. But there's a lot of people who are like deep inside of like, oh, well, we did get the reflections of when we told people what we did, the amount of both in relationship people and single people, or people that got married, either said, oh, well, that's what I want to do, or I wish we did that. Or my favorite one was, especially talking to single men about it, them actually shifting their perspective on marriage too. When I told them about the whole process of like a wedding being actually stepping into a sacred union versus a wedding for some man to give away his daughter and to go like, and to have like an outfit that is thousands of dollars that you wear for just a few hours and stuff like that. I mean, cool if you like all that stuff, that's completely fine. But the amount of conversations I've had of people like when identifying them, talking about that you can actually enter this marriage in a different way, they're like, oh, I actually totally think about marriage differently now, just because we reframed one single day, one single event, 1 6-hour event.
That's powerful.
Yeah. So I'm fired up.
It's almost like the ending world, it'll be stereotypical what's about to come out of my mouth, right? But like ending world, like men being afraid of commitment. It's not that they're afraid of commitment, right? It's that they like don't see the...
They don't want to make it into a huge spectacle.
Yeah, right? And what I also like about this is I feel like, you know, there's cycles in life all the time, right?
Yeah.
And trends come and go. And right now, like, I follow a lot of Instagram homesteading accounts. We are not going to homestead because I don't want chickens. I have this perception that they're too smelly. But anyways, I follow all these homesteading accounts. But it's all it is going back to what our ancestors did, right? Like,
Totally.
go back a few generations. But a few generations ago, that's what the wedding was. Like,
Right.
you didn't have a crazy, you put on your best Sunday dress, right? You still had chores in the morning and you had breakfast with your family, and maybe you'd go like men in one area and women in one area to get ready, right? But then it wasn't like it is today, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's all about getting back down to basics, but also like the basics of like what you want too. So if someone has a dream of entering like this homestead type relationship, which I'm totally down for. I'm 100%.
Even if they're smelly and there's chicken doodle all over your yard, I don't know.
Name them and everything.
And then a fox gets it, and then your heart is broken every time.
Well, then the circle of life.
Circle of life. You fed that fox. There you go.
We fed that fox. Yeah, but so if like someone wants that homestead life, like then you can do it. You can totally start that first day in your marriage of like representing what you want to receive in life, right? And and so like what can you welcome in as you enter this new chapter?
Yeah. You know what kind of drives me nuts? You know, when we, you know, after a wedding, we, you know, find a couple like the next morning and like, so, you know, how did you enjoy the day? Do you feel different today? And it's like, no, about the same.
Yeah.
It's like, really? Like you just had, you know, the most wonderful day of your life, quote.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, you decided to take the jump into marriage with your best friend, you know, and it feels about the same.
Feel a little hungover.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, I think that's a really cool thing that, you know, you and your wife are doing and, you know, offering and just pointing into getting that different perspective into people's heads. Like there are other options out there for people, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's already in people's heads. And it's at a certain point where it's just like, man, like, it's like, honey, maybe we should just go to the courthouse or something.
Yeah.
But then just like, but I want a little bit more than that. Just like, okay, you're right. Like the seed is already planted, but for our responsibilities, like what we feel is just like really bringing that out of whatever their aligned desire is.
Yeah.
So you're saying within this coaching that you're coaching couples through this, it's also is talking them through like there are going to be outside expectations and you're coaching them through that, right? Like you're kind of giving them like this
just a heads up. Mom and Dad might not like this.
Yeah, like how can you explain that process a little bit more? So walk us through how like if someone Duck the Date is a name, right?
Yeah.
Which I want to know where the name comes from. I'm trying to process it in my head. So walk us through like the name and like what a client would get.
Yeah. So with what a client gets, so we stack it up into however long the retainers are for. So some people can come in 6 months to 9 months, 12 months, or 18 months, depending on like what their kind of plan is. For 6 months, like we're meeting people that are like, we've already booked venue and we're like not feeling good about it anymore. We need to start changing this stuff. And like, we're about to send out the guest list. So it's a lot more time crunch versus someone that we're working with now. Actually, Maggie, who also works here, she's working with us. They're like on the 18-month sort of time frame. So, but what we get, so each of the retainers, like we meet a lot more in the beginning of the planning because it's much more important. Like, all right, let's get aligned on the budget. How about this guest list? What's the vision? Let's get all that on the front end of time. And with our coaching, we're not a wedding planner, so we're not going to book anything for them. We're actually helping people do it themselves. And it was really interesting with one client that we're working with, and we just had a session with them the last weekend. And even though they've been together for 10 years, they've never made a budget together. So I can't plan for like them not knowing how to make a budget together. We just always make a budget for like their day. And it turned into a relationship coaching thing about actually how do we make a budget? You like asking the female in the relationship, well, what would your ideal way of making a budget be if you've never made one before? What would feel easy to you? Okay, partner number 2, what would feel easy to you? Are they the same? Are they different? Where do they overlap? Where are they different? Then we actually go through with a real budget for them right now, because this is about their wedding day, and calculating exactly where are we going to allocate our resources, how much do we want to do. And then it's very interesting when the kind of like the sparks fly. It's like, oh, we're going to compromise on this part, and we're going to go like really heavy on this part. Boom, like that. Now that's something that showed up there.
It's so specific and so tailored. You're not saying here's our blueprint. Every couple follow this. You're saying like, you didn't even tell them here's how you do a budget, or here's how I do a budget. It was, what does that look like to you, or what would feel good or easy to you? Oh, brilliant.
Right. So we keep it. There's so much color to play with here. Like it's a really blank canvas for our coaching. Like we definitely don't want to get into like the coaching that we do right now. Like we're going to talk about this today, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow, next time. We do have a structure and a framework where it's like, let's talk about the budget before the guest list, because the budget does dictate the guest list. And then we talk about the vision before that to get like an overarching idea. But there's definitely so much wiggle room that comes with it. But we are going to be putting out a course at a time, and that's going to like take place for like the step-by-step process, like do this today, and do that today. But we're dealing with people here, and people are, we're emotional roller coasters, and we come with our own stories, and we come with our own relationships and everything. So it's really hard at this point to treat every single couple the same. We treat every couple uniquely as they are, with similar frameworks. So we take them through a map that a digital created map that we do leading up to their wedding day, and Deegan and I were continuously adding to the map, so no map actually looks the same at all, even though it has like the same endpoint of not actually the wedding day, it's like post-wedding day.
Oh, brilliant.
Because it's important to check in. It's like, all right, well, like this event happened. Day 1 of marriage started. How did day 2 go? How did week 1 go? How did week 3 go? Because, there might be some couples living together before marriage. There might be some couples living for the first time together after marriage. Like the post-wedding ceremony is going to look different for everybody. So it's also like important for us to support them and to guide them and to share what we know, or go through the journey with them too, as we're both on our journey too. I'm not sitting here saying that we know all of it, that's for sure.
I love that you spent 8 hours on your own wedding and honeymoon, and now you are investing like way more time into other people's weddings. Like so like I don't know, like the giving, right? Like, because obviously your 8 hours of planning your wedding and road trip are not counting like all of the conversations that you guys had building up to it, right? And because you're laying this framework that you're using. It's teaching them how to have these conversations all throughout, which you guys just did naturally, right? And so like all of your relationship training throughout wasn't accounted for in that 8 hours, but because you did that hard work all along, boom, when it came time for your wedding, it was all laid out.
Yeah, it came time it was all laid out, and an important part of our wedding day was flexible. If we got married on the 20th of November, awesome, but if it was a rain day and we got married on the 21st, it was no big deal to us. Like, we left so much flexibility because we just refused to have stress, and flexibility, like bamboo, is okay, it bends a little bit, but it's just as strong. So I like to take on the idea of anti-fragility. Actually, when stress happens, you get stronger versus you get weaker, right? So our muscles are anti-fragile. When we break them down, they grow back stronger. But glass is fragile, meaning that if it breaks, it's done for, unlike our muscles. So but we can take so many things in our life and make them anti-fragile, where they get stronger actually as the stress happens. So if a couple goes through and has a stressful budgeting session, they're going to be really, really good at budgeting in one day if they keep working at it. But if they let them break it, if they allow it to break them, that's fragile. But if they say, I actually understand you more. I understand the way you think. Oh, I understand the way that you were raised. Oh, it's like, okay, I understand your views on money. And understanding, and then cooperating and guiding and learning to love that perspective. Now that's strengthening. That's anti-fragile.
Oh, definitely. Because you think of in a marriage, financials come so much into it, right? And so you can't really be as intimate with someone if you don't have all of those pieces, right? like if, people who keep like separate accounts or whatever, right? Like it's, it's like silos then instead of this, like you're interconnected and everything is just marriage, intimate together, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's a principle too of like there's a triangle that I like to use to just talk about relationships, but a perfect triangle has an equal sides. If you think about one side being commitment, one side being intimacy, and then the other side being passion, like we want all of those to be like really equal. But when they get skewed, let's say like passion, like it's just like the sexual drive like reduces, but your commitment and intimacy stay the same, like that's great. But then it's like, okay, then like the relationship can get into like friend zone area, or if like the passion is really high and the intimacy is really good, but like the commitment is really there, well, that's kind of like a wobbly table where it's just like, okay, like where is this fully going to go? And people might have different ideas about it too. So when we look at the wedding, commitment is definitely like part of it there. Like it's like, because that's what the whole day is about. What we found is that passion and intimacy are really low. Like oftentimes with the brides and grooms, the only time they have together is like when they're getting photos taken together, which somebody else is there taking the photo, or they're sitting next to each other over the dinner and everybody's watching with them. Like in my definition of intimacy, that doesn't fit that model. And then also too, when it comes to passion, only about, I think, 1/3 of couples have sex on their wedding night. So two-thirds don't. So, it's all. Wow. So then when we talk about like, okay, how do we manage your energy throughout the day? If that's like what you foresee, if that's what you both would like as an end to your first day, and like that passion ritual.
Yeah.
But but when you're talking about flowers and what seats are people going to sit on, and
what are the name cards going to look like?
Yeah, what are the name cards going to look like?
No, we can't put those two together.
Yes, we can't put
right?
those two together. And so then like where does the passion and intimacy like really like where you're making so much space for other people? Like, yeah, they can't sit together because they won't do well, but like what about us? Like where can we sit together? And like where can we create like intimacy with each other? Where can we create passion for each other? Like this is like day one. Like where can we create like our ideal first day of marriage for the rest of our life together?
Yeah.
So
awesome. And so the title?
Duck the Date?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you notice on a QWERTY keyboard, the letter D is really close to the letter F.
Oh.
So I was very mad one day. I'm just like, I'm going to name this F the Date. And Deegan's like, okay, well, we can't do that. And then knowing a little bit about marketing, naming a company, if you can give them an image to think about, like for example, like there's this roofing company that I took guidance from, and they were called Apple Roofing. It's like, okay, apples have nothing to do with roofing, but whenever people saw their signs, they thought of an apple, and when you can picture an image, you're more memorable. So I'm like, what's the closest thing to F the Date? Duck the Date. So then we're having a logo made right now. We're going to have like a little duck wing, but then the ring will be on the middle, middle feather versus the ring one.
Just to further hone in on what that original name was.
We're giving the wedding industry the bird.
Got it. Clever. Look at all the puns in this.
Yeah, I ran with it. Yeah. I ran with it for sure. Yes.
And that's funny because as you're saying, like duck the date, I'm like, I just keep picturing a rubber ducky. Like
rubber duck, yeah.
Yeah, so that you're right. You're the image. I never thought of that the image is brought to mind with the word.
And ducks are also one of those birds that stay together for a really long time.
You thought of it all, huh?
Mm-hmm. I actually just thought about that right now.
Oh.
There you go.
Keep on going.
Yeah.
The duck that keeps on ducking.
Duck right.
Yes.
So I do have to ask, because I am in the wedding industry with Never Films and, doing like capturing films and moments and stuff. And,
nice.
We have our venue upstairs too with Algoma Club. Yeah. So when you're walking, like for your own like wedding, did you have anybody like capture like the moment for you guys? Yeah, we definitely did. So, I mean, we spent money, like we still did things that are part of traditional wedding things. And, but part of our budgeting process is like,
actually figuring out what we want so bad where we can have a no limit spending on it, and then cut everything else that we're like, oh, this is okay, or like we don't really want, like a wedding cake. Like we're just like, we're not going to spend the average price of $500 on a wedding cake because we don't want cake, but we want the most amazing photos, and we want that experience. So we chose like a top tier adventure photographer to film us on our wedding day, and we also wanted to have it in like one of the most gorgeous places of the United States for us, and that was Sedona, Arizona. So, but instead of booking a venue for Sedona, Arizona, we're like, well, we really like hiking. How about we just go hike to a rock? And we got married like right next to like Snoopy Rock. And we did have another guest there too. His name was Dan. He was the officiant. I brought him on as another coach of mine. And so he knew my wife and I, and so he kind of officiated it. We had Jen there, who was our photographer, to capture the moment. And then we found some nearby hikers to be our second witness. It's like,
I bet that like goes down as one of their best days ever.
yeah,
Oh my
definitely.
gosh.
So her name was Rita. So little old Rita decided to hike off the trail that day, and she found herself in a wedding. Yes. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about that. So then, then we just, again, we continue to spend money on like what we actually want in our weddings. Like the rings actually were really important for our wedding. Like we want top dollar for our rings because that's exactly what, and to a local here, Alyssa and Anna, and but then other things that were just like we don't really want, then we just didn't spend any money on it too. So it's all about knowing what you want.
Nice.
So logistically, how do you tell a photographer, we want it for the 20th, but if it rains, we need you the 21st? So you can't book anything the second day. How do you navigate that?
So she was an adventure photographer, meaning like part of her price is her flying out there. So she's there for us only. And like when she's out there in Arizona, like she is there for us. We actually had 2 full days of photography. We had our engagement photos the day before we got married.
I love it.
But then with her being out there too, it's just then like, okay, well, we could capture some stuff over here. So her schedule is our schedule. So like, and then she kind of plans for like rain days in between. So, we paid for that type of luxury and everything. And it was worth every single penny. And I would have paid more actually because it was so valuable to me. But yeah, so we didn't really have that issue for the photographer needing to be out at a certain time or to be gone at a certain time because we were willing to go premium on that convenience because we didn't want that stress.
So again, you knew what you wanted, and that was how you aligned the day then around those things.
We knew what we wanted. We knew precisely what we didn't want either. And that's what made it the freedom to go premium on something like a photographer really feel really good because we didn't need to pay for other things like what the chairs looked like or booking, booking a DJ or something like that or, or even like Deegan's wedding dress. It was a $300 dress, so it was just like, okay, well, whatever money we've spent, if it needs to be part of there, like, and you really want it, what is something that would just make you over the moon happy for and put the dollars there so long as it cooperates with the budget? What's something that you want incorporated, but isn't super important? Go budget on that, and then like identifying, okay, what's things for others that's actually not for you and your couple. And I get a little like hardcore with it, but I just say cut it out, because that's not about them; it's about you.
So how do you go about marketing something like this? Like people might not even know that that's what they want to talk about. They might not know like that's what they want to do, or they aren't even interested in marriage because they're afraid of that day, right? Like how do you market something like this?
Yeah, I think it's just like about awareness, first of all, right? So we just continuously share our story. And like when people ask like, are you married? And like, I'm like, yeah. And then that's like an invitation to talk about my marriage, and an invitation to talk about my marriage also is an invitation to talk about the first day of my marriage, right? Yeah. Which is then the wedding day. So, we're in the process right now. We've only been having this like up and running for about 2 weeks now. So
awesome.
Yeah. So like this is super fresh. But right now we're just taking a very simple like social media platform because, especially my wife's algorithm, every day she hits refresh, boom, new engagement and new baby. All right. Like Facebook tells you who's engaged. So what does that look like? Slide in those DMs like, hey, so-and-so, congratulations. Just let you know we have a free ebook about how we saved thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours on our wedding. If they opt in, they say, oh, this is really awesome. Cool. Thank you very much. Or like, no, thank you. That's an indicator of like an invitation. Like, okay, can we talk to you a little bit more? Like, would you like to see more about how we do it? Would you like to do something in a similar route? And then boom, then you start just like the normal cycle of conversation. It may end up leading to a client coaching relationship, or it may just end up to a new friendship or acquaintance. Like, all said and done.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have just a few more moments here. Why don't we kind of go on what your next big step here is? What's your new thing, what you're doing? New
thing. So we're totally following in line like with what we committed to in our relationship, like hiking, traveling, and being on the road. And so we're in the process right now of selling all of our stuff. We're wrapping up our apartment right now, and we're fitting our life and a dog into a Ford Focus. And we're going to be Airbnb-ing around the country for the next year.
Nice.
So first stop in about a week, we'll be on our way to Brevard, North Carolina, and it's got the most dense quantity of waterfalls in the United States. So we're just going to hang out there for a month and chill.
Yeah.
And then Austin, Texas after it, and then Colorado, and then I have an appointment to go to Vancouver Island, where Julian, my business partner for Alter Coaching, where he resides. And then ironically, I have to be in a wedding in Boston in July, and I'm really excited for that wedding. It's really close cousin of mine. And then it's open sailing right after that. So we've talked about living in foreign countries for an extended period of time. Deegan also has a full-time job right now, and there's constant talks of like, how would you like to come to France and stuff like that. So we're hitting the road, man, and we're like inviting the life that we've always dreamt about together.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
Very
thank you.
cool.
That's really cool.
So from Vancouver to Boston, is that going to be a drive?
Yeah, we're gonna have flights, so it's going to be
I was gonna say.
good thing Deegan has experience as like a logistic coordinator.
Mapping all this out.
Mapping all it out, yeah, and then like with the dog too, and it's like, okay, he stays at like grandma's for a little bit, and then so it's like if it means driving a day to park the car and to have him in a comfortable spot so that we can go take flights into other places and stuff, then that's what we can do. But everything is figure outable.
Yes. Sure is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So it sounds like you have those the first half of the first few months planned out, but then you're saying after Boston, then it's whatever speaks to you next.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
I mean, like my definition of freedom is actually like always having a degree of uncertainty too,
Whoa.
So, yeah, that's a big one. People say they want freedom, but they can't handle uncertainty, and you can't have freedom without uncertainty.
No
I mean,
kidding.
like the bird when it takes flight, she doesn't know if she's going to hit the ground or spread her wings, but she goes for it anyways. So.
Well, you have definitely been spreading your wings.
I'm flapping.
It's an
Flapping like a duck. Yes.
Awesome. Oh my goodness.
Well, awesome, man. So how can people go ahead and follow your journey and everything?
Yeah, so we're building up an Instagram account right now. It's just simply @DuckTheDate right now, or you can follow me on Instagram too, Alex the Grateful, and that's grateful spelled a little differently, but it's GREATFULL, because we're all full of greatness. And those are the best places to connect with me for right now. And
Will people be able to see your wedding photos on any of those spots?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly what I'm going to do right after
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. A lot of the cool thing is like when you guys know this, like here's like this full setup and you guys have all your adventures, your adventures going on here, but like, oh, that was a really interesting way to make our wedding a tax write-off. because it's like, hey, here's our marketing. Like we had marketing photos, like here's the receipt. And like, this was like, we needed to do this. So like, just, you're going to see them. You're definitely going to see them. Okay. So yeah, nice. playing around with that.
Well, good. All right. So we'll check you in both spots.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that, we were able to cross paths and you're a part of our journey here at Manila for, even if it was a short while, but you never know, could continue again sometime down the road.
That uncertainty, right?
Yeah, add uncertainty, but like whenever we're back in Oshkosh, like this is the place to eat.
Yeah.
Like this is, I'm disappointed that I found it so late. Like I found this Manila post-COVID, even though I grew up here.
Okay.
Even though I grew up here, and I was like always passing. I'm like, I should try out that, and I never did. And then like one day, we came here for a celebration, and Merrick served us. And
Oh, sure.
The food was amazing. And I was just like, this place is dope.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Yes. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for
Yeah.
your wonderful food, the recipes that you guys bring and serve people, and the experiences that you give, and for having me on today and this experience right now. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Yep. Let us know whenever you're swinging through or coming back, so.
I
Love
will.
to see you and catch up. We could do this again, So
Let's do part 2.
yeah.
There we go.
Let's do it, man.
Sweet. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Barkada Podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.